Ambulance service, is the patient breathing? Okay, just try and take that. What's your name?
Oh, Christ.
Suitcases started appearing across London. Inside, body parts. A real-life jigsaw killer was on the loose. But the truth behind the horror was even darker than anyone imagined. In 2009, dismembered body parts began appearing across London.
Body parts have been discovered across Hertfordshire.
The most likely explanation for what's happened is this is a sadistic ritual killing.
Stuffed into suitcases, tossed into canals, left for the city to find.
I'm dealing with a horrific murder here. I need the public's help to help me identify who the victim is.
I've never come across an investigation as unique or as gruesome, really, as this.
This was possibly the first case when I had really sat back and thought, this is disgusting. It's actually almost impossible to listen to.
Every murder is in some way horrific or traumatic. This one had a very different element to it.
It was a case so gruesome, the killer would soon earn a chilling nickname, the Jigsaw Killer. But unlike Hollywood's twisted game master from the Saw movies, this killer's motives were chillingly real and far more personal. It all started on a cold March morning in East London. A suitcase was found floating in the Regent's Canal. Inside, a man's torso.
The torso had been found in a suitcase in Plash's Farm, not far from the A10.
This is the fifth gruesome discovery in just 3 weeks. A local farmer alerted police to what's believed to be part of a male torso here at Gore Lane in Standon.
Hacked apart with brutal precision. At first, police thought they were dealing with gang violence. Brutal but common in some parts of London. But then, they found another suitcase. And then another. It was clear. This was no random attack. Someone had a plan.
And as the investigation progressed, a team of scientists would make some startling discoveries about the nature of the crime.
The fibers have actually got onto the tapes at the time he's wrapped the items. And what he's actually done is he's sealed the evidence in himself.
Sent a photograph of the head to us because they had another missing person, not in the vicinity, but geographically fairly close. And what they wanted to know is, could this be this individual?
The body was soon identified as 49-year-old Jeffrey Howe.
Police have confirmed that the dismembered body parts they discovered scattered across 2 counties belong to 49-year-old Jeffrey Howe, who'd been reported missing by his adopted brother.
A former chef known to his friends as a kind man.
What we can say about Jeffrey, he was a really lovely, genuine man, hard-working, well thought of by his work colleagues and family. Worked all his life in the kitchen sales arena.
Jeffrey was described as being very kind, caring, open, generous, sociable. He was described as having a heart of gold.
Was good at engaging with people, was friendly, portrayed exactly what it was, a nice man.
And to others as someone struggling with life's harder edges. Jeffrey had recently fallen on hard times. Unemployed, isolated, and vulnerable. And in his time of need, he had unknowingly opened his door to a killer. Stephen Marshall, a name that would soon be whispered across the country. Marshall was a 38-year-old bodybuilder with a history of violence. He was also a petty criminal, obsessed with control, money, and intimidation.
I'd known Stephen Marshall from very early in my policing career. He and I had sort of grown up together, me as a young police officer and him learning his trade as a criminal, really. And our paths had crossed several times. In actual fact, I'd arrested him one morning with a prostitute for taking drugs, probably 6:30 on a Saturday morning outside a nightclub in Hemel Hempstead. And I became really, really excited because I just knew what Stephen Marshall was, and I knew what he was capable of.
When Jeffrey Howe rented out his spare room to Stephen Marshall and his girlfriend, Sarah Bush, He was inviting in his own killers.
His brother reported him as missing. He said that 2 people were living inside Jeffrey's flat. Jeffrey took them both in because they had nowhere to live. They were on hard times. One by the name of Sarah Bush and the other one by the name of Stephen Marshall.
It didn't take long for things to turn deadly. Marshall wanted more than just a place to stay. He wanted control over Jeffrey's entire life. Neighbors noticed changes. Jeffrey was rarely seen. His mail piled up. His car was suddenly being driven by someone else.
Detectives investigate Jeffrey Howe's bank activity, which further supports the motive behind his murder.
Sarah Bush had paid off a Cineworld account. She had opened up a Littlewoods catalogue account, made different purchases, tried to sell Jeffrey Howe's dining room table. It was worth about £4,000 or £5,000. They had completely plundered his bank account. Stephen Marshall had written out about 8 cheques, some to himself, some to Sarah Bush, and 6 or 7 cheques to a friend of his that he owed £800 to.
In terms of taking petrol without paying for petrol, selling Jeffrey's car, ordering regular takeaways, cashing checks in view of CCTV and so on.
In March 2009, Stephen Marshall killed Jeffrey Howe, likely strangling him during an argument. But it didn't end there. Marshall dismembered Howe's body with chilling precision. He cut it into pieces and began disposing of the parts across London's waterways and parks like a macabre scavenger hunt. For weeks, Marshall lived off Jeffrey's bank account, sold his car, and pretended everything was normal.
A week later, Stephen Marshall was captured on CCTV, paying in a cheque for just under £100 from Jeffrey's account into his own. Then, on the 21st of March, Marshall sold Jeffrey Howe's car via an online auction.
When they sold Jeff's car, they sold that to a non-suspecting member of the public. On the receipt was both Marshall and Bush's fingerprints, which was key, obviously, from an evidential point of view, as we built the case around them.
And before he sold the car, Marshall swapped the registration plates with his own ones. He was later spotted driving away from a petrol station without paying for the fuel, in his car, now sporting Jeffrey's personalised number plates.
But arrogance was his downfall. Anonymous tips, surveillance footage, and a slip-up in using Jeffrey's credit cards led police straight to Stephen Marshall and Sarah Bush. In police interviews, Marshall tried to downplay everything.
Do you feel upset by the fact that not only has he been murdered, but someone's chosen to dismember him and place parts of his body around the countryside?
Don't comment.
How does that make you feel?
Don't comment.
But the evidence was overwhelming. In 2010, Stephen Marshall was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 36 years. Sarah Bush, his girlfriend, was found guilty of assisting an offender.
Right from the start of the trial, there were surprises. Even before the jury had been sworn in, Marshall had originally pleaded not guilty to everything, but on the first day, he changed his plea and he admitted dismembering the body. What he didn't admit to was the murder. Right from the start, we had a slightly bizarre situation where he had actually admitted cutting somebody up, but claimed that he was not guilty of murder. And we all learnt of that before the jury had heard anything. And then there were 3 more weeks in which Marshall maintained that while he had cut up the body, he hadn't actually been guilty of the murder. He seemed pretty impassive. He looked resolute. He looked like he was concentrating very hard. He was taking it all in. He looked very serious, but he didn't betray any emotion, and he didn't look at Sarah Bush at all.
Marshall's brutal crime, his calculated, cold disposal of a human life, horrified the nation, and the media, eager for a headline, gave him a nickname he would forever carry, the Jigsaw Killer. Stephen Marshall wasn't playing a sick game like the killer from Saw. He wasn't issuing puzzles or riddles. The only game he played was with a man's life, and in the end, it was his own arrogance, not his cruelty, that cut him to pieces. What do you think? Was justice served? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into chilling true crime cases, don't forget to like and subscribe.